Okay, Brian, I think we are live on LinkedIn and the Military Retirement Blueprint channel. I'm Scott Tucker, and I'm here with Brian Wirtz. And thank you so much for joining us. If you're checking in and wondering what the heck this is about, are you a visionary or integrator? This is how Brian and I got to know each other years and years ago. And so the catalyst here in this conversation is just to kind of test an idea we have around doing a bit of a book review club, something unique and different for military retirees. But this is our initial test. So if you found this, bear with us as we're checking out. But Brian, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell folks what we want to do here.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Brian Wirtz. I'm a retired Marine. Actually retired from the Marine Corps. It's hard to believe, but it's going on 8 years.
Those boys look you right out of boot camp.
Yeah, I'm closer to a half century of life than most people would give me credit for. But I just turned 49, so I got one more year till I can hit that landmark. But
now it's time to impart the wisdom. You're hitting the age, right?
Exactly. So yeah, I'm really excited that we're doing this. Since leaving the Marine Corps, retiring, I think like a lot of veterans, we hear about what that path should look like, but a lot of us kind of discover it by a little bit of Braille discovery learning. We're trying to feel our way through it, and I think some of us kind of latch on to the value of networking. Hopefully, a lot of us do. I don't know how long you and I have been connected, but I would say it's probably 4 or 5 years since our first conversation. And it may have been that first conversation. It may have been one after that when we were just talking about books, and one of them that you threw out, and I didn't know the full context at the time, but you're like, you got to read Rocket Fuel. I'm like, cool, sounds good. I'll give it a shot. And little did I know the impact that book would have on my thinking, on my approach, and where I am now. So you were the recommender of the book to me, of which I'm eternally grateful. There it is, Rocket Fuel, the one essential combination that can change your business. So, and really, fast forward to where we are now, I actually completed a course in April. I attended an in-person course down in Orlando, taught by Mark Winters, who's one of the co-hosts or co-authors of this book. And I was certified as basically I completed the Integrator Master class. So Rocket Fuel is a book that talks about, visionaries and integrators. We can talk about that a little bit more, but I can, again, fast forwarding, I've kind of really jumped full force into using this methodology and even immersing myself to get the best possible training I could. And I'm part of a community of some of the best integrators that there are nationwide and worldwide. So it's kind of it's been a great evolution that stemmed from literally a book recommendation a few years ago. So thank you.
Right, from yours, and I got the book recommendation from my wife Jen, who got it because she was describing our relationship as being in a relationship but also having a business, and her trying to hone all my crazy ideas and stuff. And her friend she was talking to ended up being the guy who sold my condo in San Diego. He was like, "Oh, that sounds like this book Rocket Fuel." Right. Wow. So Jen mentions that to me, and I picked it up, and I think that was the first time I felt heard. I felt understood as a visionary, right? To be like, oh, this makes more sense now. Like, why didn't anybody tell me this? That was frustrating to me. And then after you and I talked about it more and we had more conversations, the obvious catalyst was, yeah, I'm a visionary now, but the catalyst should have been is that I was an obvious integrator earlier, and somebody that was the skill set we came out of the military with. People talk about translating your military skills into civilian skills. Like, you can't translate leadership. Like, what is that? No, we're people know how to follow orders, and SOPs and manage them and integrate them, right? So as officers, senior NCOs coming out of the military, we're perfect integrators. And then if some go off to be visionaries, that's an opportunity, that I take. And I think in many ways, you're doing that in your own way. You're having to be a visionary, building a business around being an integrator. So that's a unique thing down the road. But I'm thinking the opportunity that we want to, what you came to me with a few days ago was, hey, let's start a bit of a book club to talk about, some of these concepts. We're reading these books that you don't get from the military leadership books, right? Or even the how do I find my new career type books, even how to work in the corporate world books. When there's stuff like this out here that military folks aren't going to hear about, there's just no reason you're into something like rocket fuel. So I think we can be a unique introduction to these spaces, to these different ideas. Rocket fuel, I'm sure we'll do another more in-depth book as we hash this out more on this book specifically. But I think the whole thing, obviously, how we met and everything, comes back to this one, the fact that we're turning into maybe a book club, just coincidence. But anyways, that's my take on it. That's where I see the opportunity is, one, giving guys like me the permission to go, okay, you're not crazy. You're fine that you're not a perfect organized West Point grad manager. I felt bad about myself that I wasn't, aren't you disciplined? I was like, no, I don't want to be disciplined. I want to stop following orders, right? I just didn't have the way to give myself permission to know that was okay. So that's where I want to bring to this conversations that we'll have is more of those visionary ideas to say, hey, here's how I think about things as we're talking about these books. Here's how I would implement these ideas in these books, or how I wish somebody would, or I would have thought about it earlier in this process for me. And then likewise, Brian, I think where you're going to come in is, one, having been the certified integrator, that'll be huge to talk about, implementing these things and seeing whether or not it's someone who's, maybe there's a veteran watching that has a business and wants to learn more how to implement that stuff, or someone who might want to do that as a jumping step. Because I think folks get stuck in the military transition process, going to career fairs, sending out resumes, when there's so many startups out there, veteran owned, who could just use someone like you who understands these concepts, just comes in and says, hey, let me handle this for you. Those are the bigger opportunities out there. So obviously, I'm excited about the ideas here, man.
Absolutely, Scott. I mean, you nailed it, and I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs coming out of the military, but there's a lot of I don't think that the path of getting there is really clear. We can talk about some of the transition paths can lead you into the entrepreneurship lane, but I think the reality of running a small business can be pretty daunting. I know you've lived that journey. I've been supporting small businesses for the last few years, so I've seen it firsthand from the inside as well, and the challenges that exist. And even when you have people that are very entrepreneurial, visionary, so to speak, there's a lot of detailed functions that have to happen day to day, and sometimes within the individual, those things are like in violent conflict with each other for time and priority, and which is why I think the concept of rocket fuel makes so much sense to our population, because we have come from environments where we're used to having primary designated leaders and other supporting leaders who function together literally to make things happen. Rocket fuel is that. We talk about visionaries. Visionaries are by nature thinking big picture. They've got great ideas. They want to focus on external relationships and what the next big thing is, maybe the culture of the organization, but they don't necessarily want to think about the details of running things day to day. They don't necessarily want to think about, oh, how do I make sure that these two functional leads that I have are talking to each other, and if there's problems, maybe their skill set isn't necessarily super honed around identifying those problems, having really good discussion, and then walking away with actionable requirements, to-dos to actually make things happen. And that's why having two roles that can really collaborate together can make a difference. So this, this is kind of fundamental to kind of where my passion has come. You mentioned I'm a bit of a visionary and an integrator. That's Mark will say that it's a small group of people that are in that category, and those that are in there have to choose. And for me, I kind of do a bit of both. I am an integrator. I support companies directly, fractionally, basically go in and help them fill that role. But I also have a visionary component. And Mark in the class asked me, if you got to choose one for forever, which one is it? I said, it's probably, for me, it is the visionary, because I want to grow a business. And the business I want to grow is actually helping other veterans and other small businesses connect with each other, so we can get more veterans onto this very well-aligned career path that can help them run and manage small businesses. And then for those that are also visionaries, maybe once they get used to being a good integrator and they want to take that next step and truly be a visionary, they know the internal dynamics that lead to success, so they will be a better visionary in that regard as well.
Yeah, the consciousness around, the awareness around that is, I struggled with it for years, because I didn't know that there was a definition of the two, and so I was being pulled this way to follow the vision. Like, there's the obvious opportunity, but then if you don't have the ducks in rows, it feels like you're making mistakes or you're failing or just being dumb. And so, well, Brian, I haven't read the book in a while. You mentioned the small business aspect of it. That seems obvious. Is it really true? I mean, you went to the course, talked to Mark Winters, the author. Is it really about the small business mentality? Will this also apply into guys that may be stuck in the corporate world? How would they use this into something that would benefit them today before they can go out and find that small business opportunity, either as an integrator or a visionary?
That's a great question. So the concept is actually universal, and some of the examples that come out of the book are some of your huge companies that have really thrived by having this visionary integrated relationship. I think one of the biggest ones they talk about is the Disney, the Walt Disney, Roy Disney. Walt built the brand and vision. Roy ran the company. And there's other examples, McDonald's, Ford. I mean, there's plenty of large corporations that have grown by having really strong teams. And I think you can find those examples at a lot of different levels. The Rocket Fuel is part of the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System library of books. And EOS is a tool set that is kind of tailored for small businesses because it's a great tool set to use. It's kind of like an SOP. It's a set of tools that allow businesses to kind of systematically do what they want to do. But Rocket Fuel itself, just like it'll apply for Disney or Ford, it can apply at any level. Anytime you have two individuals that can collaborate to run a group, to do things together, you have the potential to create Rocket Fuel. If you really, what it is it's making a clear distinction between roles and relationships to get the best out of both individuals that are in that relationship. So, if you have a more visionary person that is good with those, that loves networking, or that loves coming up with new ideas, that maybe never has a problem coming up with new ideas, but because they come up with so many, they need help focusing which ideas are actually mattering, which ones should get time and attention. That other person, the integrator part of their relationship, is the person that can actually help them make that happen. So it doesn't have to be at that high of, it doesn't have to be in small businesses. It can literally be anywhere. You can get two people that can really start collaborating together and come up with kind of a yin and yang relationship. The Rocket Fuel, they use the puzzle pieces. It's two puzzle pieces. It's and really sometimes they go with three puzzle pieces. It's the visionary and the integrator. They have to be good fits for each other, and then they also have to be a good fit for the business, or if we're talking something other than the business, for whatever that objective is that they're trying to achieve.
And so, I mean, the hard part is that obviously a vision starts, but you don't always have an integrator right there. And so it takes a while to get someone to get on board, understand what's going on and stuff. So that's a hard part. And so the first step, even before you find two different people to hold these roles, I mean, the role essentially exists regardless, even if you're not aware of it, right? Yeah. So in my day-to-day, I'm focused on guys going through the military retirement process, and this is where they're thrown to the wolves. And I sometimes make the joke that the sooner that you realize that none of this is designed to help you, an individual, it's for the royal you. In general, they want more of you to do generally better. But the sooner you realize that none of this retirement process, transition process, job hunting, resume help is going to help you individually. And so guys start to realize as they're going through the process, they're finally just like, all right, I got to figure this out on my own. And then they're bombarded with the information. So that's kind of like the visionary, too many ideas, right? Yeah. And then the integration part of, well, I got to do the resumes, I got to do the networking, and then they're just left with doing all that on their own. To get that organized, to recognize that those two different things are going to exist, even if it's just you on your own. I'm brainstorming right now as I do as a visionary. But I'm just thinking, man, if we could get people to give themselves their permission to, but one, take the full responsibility of it and recognize, hey, sometimes when everybody else is leaning into the resume building and the networking, if you're out here in La La Land, you might stand out and find something you weren't expecting, right? At the same time, how do you better do the nuts and bolts of the military transition process without just falling in with everybody else? I mean, was there any lesson from this book for guys going through that process?
Well, I think, just based on your comment, the thing that kind of strikes me is that it's good to recognize that even though you may have to do some different roles yourself, it's good to understand that those are two different sets of things. There's an exercise called delegate and elevate, and that's part of the EOS tool set. I think it probably stems from somewhere else. But basically, if you were to divide the things that we do into quadrants, there's those things that you actually love to do and that are energizing to you. And that's where you want to spend the most of your time. There's also things that you're good at and you enjoy. So maybe you don't love them, but they're things that you can and you enjoy doing. That's also not a bad place to spend some of your time. But then, and those would both kind of be above the line of like gratification, right? Below that line, you have two other categories. You have this category of things that we've learned to do and we're sufficiently good at to actually be productive, but they drain us. We don't like doing those tasks. And then the final set of things are things that we're not actually good at and we hate doing. And yet we find ourselves in those areas. So I think as veterans, that is a task. And I honestly cannot recall if that is in this book or not. I'd have to dive back in. But that's a tool set that, identifying those quadrants allows you to be really focused of how you want to spend your time. Unfortunately, some of us can recognize that we want to not do those things that are in the lower, quadrant, that you're both not good at it and you don't like it. You don't want to spend a lot of time there. The problem a lot of us have is we get good at something that we also don't like, but because we're good at it, we can actually earn money doing it. And then we just spend our lives in that quadrant doing something that we have the capability and skill to do, but we really get no gratification. Mm-hmm. What I would hope to do is by distinguishing the fact that these are in categories. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you can just hand this stuff off, but if you're up for getting someone to help you write your resume because that's not your strong suit, maybe that's an area where you can delegate, and you still need to be engaged. You own the product, but maybe that's somewhere you can get help. You and I were talking. I'm working on a website, and I put that in the lower right, that worst category. I'm not good at it, and I don't like it. that's an area where if I want to have a website, it just doesn't make sense for me personally to be spending my time doing that.
Yeah.
That's the mindset that I think a lot of us don't have. We just put it all in this big bucket of this is all the stuff I got to do and I got to drive forward because it all needs to get done. When we can separate it, then we can think more entrepreneurially. And even to take this to the small business side, what happens to founders of companies is they may start a company because they're a visionary and they have an entrepreneurial idea, but they really have that one single idea causes them, it requires them to be an integrator first. The majority of that visionary's time is going to be spent in the integrator seat until they can get the company to a level where they can actually bring in someone to be their integrator. And then they can look at honing that visionary component of who they are. And that's how they truly delegate and elevate. It's some get there faster than others, some never get there, but that's truly where we want visionary entrepreneurs to get, so that they can absolutely love and thrive in life. For veterans, recognizing that exists is a way that they can start to really focus on the things that are going to make them both move forward, but get them in the mindset of how do I operate in my best zone? And by operating in your best zone, you're going to have a lot better chance of succeeding.
No, I think that's a great point to wrap it up on, Brian, because I mean, you're a perfect example of one of the things I talk about in my book of being, just treat yourself like a business as you're going through the retirement process. Like, because whether or not you get an employer, if somebody hires you, rather than calling them an employer, consider it a client who's currently using your services, right? And that way, that second transition we know is coming for what, 70% of folks that end up in another career anyways. So why are we putting so much effort into that first job, all the energy going to that first recruiter and stuff, when it's probably just going to happen again? So why not take all the control back and say, no, you're the business owner of you. Like, you could control that way. You might open up, for what I talk about, new income opportunities. So you're not just tied to, people say that's the safe option to go get the job. It's like, how on earth did we get confused or brainwashed enough to think that working with one employer is the safe option versus building a stack of skills where you can find many customers and clients potentially, or many companies that would want to hire you. And I don't know if they do that intentionally or they're just lazy. But I ultimately, I think that's what you and I's mission is with this, is to, again, always come back to Rocket Fuel and just introduce people to these ideas. They'll find themselves where they fit in, because it's just so simple. It's black. Where are you at right now? Are you an integrator or visionary? Pick one, like you said, and run with it until and then the opportunities will show up, and you'll know when you want to switch or not. And then eventually you'll know where you can just hang your hat, and hopefully have other people doing it for you. The delegation thing. I mean, guys going through the transition process, spending hours every night, when you could spend, and they don't have time to go do things they want to do. It's like, pay someone else to go get your groceries. Like, start doing that stuff. Like, outsource in other ways. Whether or not you're outsourcing to write resumes and all that stuff I don't understand. But there's got to be ways to, because when you treat yourself with a business, start hiring people. Use your money. Actually, use your money to buy some more time so you can build these skill sets. Figure it out. Is what it's all about. So it starts with the one individual to do it for themselves. Right. Ultimately, I think that's kind of my point. But cool, man. Anything else you want to lead us with? I got an idea for the next book I want to talk about.
Awesome.
I think.
I'm just excited to have this. To be starting this conversation, to have a chance to talk about books. To me, this is. I guess that'd probably be the thing I want to end on is, we both, our veterans came from the military. I know in the Marine Corps, we had something called the Marine, the Commandant's Reading List. And we were recommended to read a certain number of books every year, professional reading, along with having subscriptions to our the Marine Corps Gazette, professional reading and
Officers Club,
and exactly all this PME. And I'll be honest, I did the required PME, and I got a lot out of it. But the required PME was that,
right?
Exactly, professional military education. Thanks for keeping me in check. But I never really, it wasn't like I went above and beyond. I did, I got a grad degree while I was still on active duty. So I mean, I always had reasons, and a lot of them good reasons to not dive in and go as far as I could. And I was finding myself probably about 3 or 4 years ago in that same vein as a civilian. And I got an MBA while I was active duty, and I always wanted to build and grow businesses. But I found there was a lot that I just didn't know, and I hadn't gotten the chance to learn it yet. And so a friend of mine, and maybe someday, a guy by the name of Jared, he picked up, I had mentioned a book to him, and he finished it before I did because he grabbed it on Audible. I'm like, okay, well, I got no excuse here. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I started listening to Audible. I run, I walk a dog, I have commute time, I have all this time. So I just started getting in the habit of taking in. I started about 1 book a month. Sometimes I take in 2 books a month, and I've had a chance to, I've gotten my daughter, sometimes we have some kid books that we'll listen to. So between the two of us, I'm almost always listening to a book. And as such, in about 3 years, I've probably taken in a good 100-ish business books. Wow. And that has literally changed my ability to do what I do. And if and we'll talk about some of those here, I'm sure. Doing that, if I have a question or if there's a book that I think is going to be relevant to an upcoming challenge I have, rather than just kind of getting surface deep on it or talking from what I don't know, I'll actually put that as, I'll take that from my wish list, put it to the top of the priority list, and I'll listen to it for a month or 2 weeks. And now I can actually I'm in a much better informed position to impact that in the business that I'm in. So
yeah,
look forward to bringing that out to the group.
Right. No, absolutely. It's just, is there immediately useful information, right? The problem with the PME, I'm reading a bunch of generals books, guys who lost wars, like McChrystal. Man, these guys are psychopaths. Like, I never got into that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's some battle tactic stuff you get from some of those books, but at the end of the day, the life useful, I think as a veteran, as a leader for our country, these are the ideas and stuff that end up being the most useful. So no, man. Well, no, great. I think that's a good way to end it. And, appreciate folks listening in. If you got books you'd like us to check out, let us know. But I think Brian and I got a bunch of ideas and stuff we want to hash out as well. So we'll check out there, and I guess we'll just schedule stuff out and make a little announcements when we want to do it. So appreciate you joining us for our test run and really talking about the book that got us introduced to each other, and it has really been helpful in so many ways. The Rocket Fuel, if you haven't read it, I recommend you check it out, no matter if you're in business or otherwise. The idea of being an integrator or a visionary was life-changing for me personally. I know it was for Brian, and it's been helpful in so many areas of our lives. So recommend you check it out, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Scott. We'll see you.
You bet.